It started with a fence, simple, honest work on land passed down through generations. But in one quiet corner of the countryside, a neighbor decided she had authority where none existed. What followed was harassment, sabotage, and a battle for the right to simply build in peace. I didn't pick this fight, but I wasn't about to back down either. This is the story of how one fence stood against control and united a community. The fence was supposed to be simple, just a few panels of pressure-treated pine, some wire mesh, and a weekend of hard work under the sun. For me, it was more than a home improvement project. It was a tribute to my grandfather, who had left me this farm after spending most of his life protecting it from being swallowed up by developers and politics. The land sat just outside the edge of town, nestled in a quiet rural patch, untouched by modern subdivision drama. No HOA, no nonsense, just space, sky, and soil. I built that fence with care, each post hammered in with the kind of satisfaction that comes from doing something with your own hands. But peace has a way of bothering the people who don't have any. Her name was Karen Caldwell, and her first words to me were, "That fence isn't approved." I was bent over one of the corner posts, sweating through a sun-bleached t-shirt when she called out across the property line. She stood with arms folded tight, sunglasses perched too high, lips pursed with purpose. "There's no HOA out here," I said, not even looking up. "There's always a standard," she replied. I didn't know her well. I had only seen her house once, about 100 yards down the road, surrounded by manicured shrubs and a sign that read, "Pine Acres Private Property." She didn't own the neighborhood, but she acted like she did. That evening, a flyer appeared in my mailbox. It was homemade, printed on bright paper, filled with vague warnings about unauthorized structures and how certain types of fencing devalue nearby homes. At the bottom, it was signed, "Concerned Citizens for Pinecrest View." I wasn't sure such a group even existed. Still, I ignored it, until the sheriff showed up. Sheriff Matthews had been on the job for 25 years. He leaned on his cruiser with a knowing smile, hat in hand. "I'm gonna level with you," he said. "I got called out here because someone thinks you're building a compound." I laughed, mostly out of disbelief. "It's a fence." "I figured as much," he replied. "Mind if I take a look?" I walked him along the perimeter, showed him the zoning paperwork. It was all legal. No HOA, no encroachments, no violations. He nodded slowly and shook his head. "I'll file this under neighbor drama," he said. But Karen didn't take the hint. She escalated. Over the next few weeks, she plastered the neighborhood with flyers. She accused me of fortifying my land and turning it into a threat to the peaceful aesthetic of Pinecrest. She even stood outside my property one Saturday morning, yelling at a group of volunteers who came to help me finish the project. That afternoon, I installed security cameras. What she didn't know was that the footage would later catch every trespass, every midnight stunt, every moment she tried to sabotage what had become more than just a fence. It had become a line between freedom and control. Then came the night she crossed it. I woke up to the sound of wood snapping. When I checked the footage, there she was, dressed in black, wearing gloves, dragging bolt cutters through the weeds like some kind of commando. She cut a section of the wire mesh and began to pull at the boards. I called the sheriff. By the time Matthews arrived, she was still on my property, screaming about public access easements and community oversight. She waved a crudely drawn map, claiming the corner of my land belonged to the town. He arrested her for trespassing and disturbing the peace. It should have ended there, but it didn't. A week later, I received a certified letter from the HOA in Pine Acres, the neighborhood she lived in. Half a mile down the road, they claimed she did not represent them and that her actions were neither condoned nor authorized. A thinly veiled attempt at distancing. But the damage was done. Then, something unexpected happened. The community started paying attention. People who had driven past the farm for years stopped to ask questions. Some left notes of support in my mailbox. A retired teacher named Marlene brought lemonade and offered to help repaint the damaged section. A father and son duo, the Hales, showed up one weekend with tools and gloves. She made us all look bad. Mr. Hale said, "This fence, it's not the problem. She is." The sheriff's office released a statement saying there were multiple reports of targeted harassment. Local media picked up the story after one of my neighbors shared the footage online. Karen was suspended from the Pine Acres Community Board. Her fabricated concerned citizens group turned out to be a solo project, and the HOA, clearly trying to save face, issued a second letter this time, publicly denouncing her actions. But what moved me most wasn't the backlash she received. It was the quiet solidarity that began to form around me. Neighbors I had never met began stopping by just to talk. One woman brought seeds from her garden and asked if she could plant wildflowers along the edge of the fence. A teenager started taking photos of the fence at sunset, calling it the wall that built the neighborhood. So I decided to host an event. It wasn't anything grand, just a simple gathering on a Sunday afternoon with iced tea, some homemade food, and open space for anyone who wanted to come. I called it a "Thanks for standing with me" picnic. I expected maybe a dozen people. Over 40 showed up. Even Sheriff Matthews brought a dish, his wife's famous peach cobbler. I stood by the fence that afternoon, watching kids chase each other, watching old neighbors laugh like friends, and realized something: the fence had become more than a boundary. It had become a symbol, not of division, but of resistance, of community, of earned respect. As for Karen Caldwell, she eventually sold her home and moved out of Pine Acres. No one talks about her much anymore. Her legacy faded, replaced by a collective memory of what can happen when one person tries to impose control on what should be free. My grandfather always said the land would teach me things if I listened. He was right. That fence taught me about boundaries, literal and personal. It taught me that standing your ground doesn't always look like shouting. Sometimes it looks like building, documenting, quietly outlasting the storm until truth has a chance to take root. And now, when I walk the perimeter in the early morning light, I don't just see pine boards and posts. I see resilience. I see the strength of neighbors who chose to stand on the right side of the line. And I see peace, the kind that doesn't just arrive, but is built, defended, and finally shared.